Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, and of course, the LSU Tigers. And we have a great guest for you tonight. Our panel includes Lyons, Yellin of WLAE-TV, Cory Johnson of Fox Sports 1280 will join us in a few minutes. Lyons, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us. Always good to have you on the program. And if you would, we'd like to start off, as you know, letting folks know a little bit about what you're involved in over at Channel 4.
Just been covering a lot of LSU baseball in the last few weeks. Been totally immersed in that. And then same old stuff. We're getting ready here for SEC football media days coming up in just a couple weeks. Yeah. And then football season will be here before you know it.
Of course, Leslie Spoon went to Omaha. Have you been to Omaha before?
I haven't. I haven't been to Omaha.
Is it an assignment that you would have liked to have done? Be in Omaha, Nebraska for 2 weeks?
If I'm being completely honest with your audience, no, because I've been at Saints training camp for the last 3 years and spent a month on the road. So I was happy to let Leslie go. That was on her bucket list, but I would like to get to Omaha at some point.
At some point, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Especially, I mean, again, you see, well, when the Tigers made it to the championship series, I mean, you just saw so many people from Louisiana make the trek up there.
Unbelievable.
The stands were incredible. When they did the overview of the stands and you saw all those Louisianians or LSU followers in purple and gold out there, it was an amazing sight to see. It was the box north.
It really was. I mean, and being at the regionals and then the super regionals and then Alex Box throughout the season, you see all those fans out there all the time. But to see them make the trek up there, I mean, I think that really shows the country what LSU, what the baseball program means to LSU, and people should understand. Football maybe seem like king at LSU, but really it's the baseball team that are the king of the schools over there. I mean, it really is impressive what that program has done.
And do you think that's because of the success that they've had? I mean, you look at what Skip Bertman did at LSU in building that program up, and obviously they got a great following. I mean, again, it's a little different than putting over 100,000 in Tiger Stadium than what you're going to do, 20,000 at the box. But again, there are diehards on both for obviously both sports. But you look at what they've done in terms of baseball right now. I mean, one of the league leaders in attendance in the NCAA. I mean, when you look at other programs, they strive to do what LSU does.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a thirst for baseball in this state. This is really a rich baseball state. Yes. And you don't have a major league team. You don't really have one. You have Houston close by, but other than that, you got Tampa Bay, Atlanta. There really isn't a major league baseball team that fans can rally around in this state or this general area. So I think people have taken on LSU baseball, and you see the players that come up through the ranks over the years. These are future major league players. So you're really I mean, it's better than minor league baseball. Let's put it that way.
It's a major league farm team, really.
Absolutely.
In a lot of cases, no doubt about it. And of course, growing up in this city, again, you were in a lot of cases listening to KMOX. So you were a St. Louis fan, or you were listening to the Astros, obviously coming out of Houston, or again with the advent of cable TV, Chicago Cubs or the Atlanta Braves. I mean, but you're right, so far away from having our own major league team. And
a lot of fan bases in this city from all over the country.
It is. Absolutely. It's a melting pot. No doubt about it. Listen to this line. This team accomplished this year. 17th SEC regular season championship, 4th under Maneri in his 11-year tenure, 6th SEC tournament title in the last 10 years, NCAA record, 6 straight national super seed, 26 NCAA regional appearance in the last 29 seasons, and 24th time to host a regional in the past 28 seasons. 18th College World Series appearance in the past 32 seasons, 3rd in the past 5 years. They tied the school record with the second most single-season College World Series wins with 4. First was in 2009 with 5. They were 25-3 in leading up to the College World Series championship finals, and they had an SEC record of 13 50-win seasons. That's courtesy of our friends at Dandy Don's website. What a year for the Tigers.
I mean, the superlatives, you can go on and on about this team. I mean, I think other than the national championship teams, even this team will go down among those as one of the greatest in LSU history. Just the spirit that they had, the way they came back at the end of the regular season, won the SEC tournament title, the regular season co-champions with Florida, putting together all those 17 wins in a row. But it was more than that. It was the way that this team was so resilient. Before they got to the College World Series, every time that they trailed or were tied, they scored in the next half inning. Mm-hmm. And this was over a 3-4 week period of time. That's unheard of in baseball. So for them to come through at the end of the season the way they did, I think it just speaks volume to the senior leadership and the way this team was constructed.
You've seen the great teams at LSU since the Bertman era. Where do you rank this one?
I mean, I don't think you can rank this ahead of a national championship team.
Right, I agree.
But for the teams that have competed, that have been to Omaha, this is, to me, the best that I've seen. I mean, this was a dynamic roster. It had everything. You think about if you had Eric Walker around there, some of the injuries, Bryce Jordan this season, if he's in your 3-hole instead of Duplantis, you just add more depth to your lineup. A couple other freshman pitchers got hurt this year. So this team could have, it had a chance, even with all the stuff that went wrong for it this year, they still were able to bounce back. They were so close the other night to pulling it out. So I rank this team as probably one of the best that didn't quite capture that title.
And of course, you've covered the SEC for a long time. You know, you talk about SEC baseball. I mean, there were some naysayers out there about SEC baseball and how strong they were. When you look at the SEC, how, again, teams that went into the regionals, super regionals, ultimately got to the College World Series, and, of course, in the national championship, 2 SEC teams, come on, they're playing some pretty good baseball in the SEC.
It's the best baseball in the country. These guys duke it out. It's just like in football. They go head-to-head, week in and week out throughout the conference season. And they just beat up on each other. It's impossible to have a record like Oregon State in the SEC. There's just no way. And then you look at a team like South Carolina, who's got probably the best pitcher in the country, who has Tommy John surgery. He's out for the season, so that affected their season. That's a team you take out of it. The SEC has 7, really 8 if you add South Carolina, teams in the conference that are legitimate playoff, NCAA tournament teams, and that can absolutely, that are just filled with major league prospects.
No doubt about it. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We're going to take a quick break. We'll bring in our second guest, Cory Johnson. Lyons Yellin is with us from WLAE-TV. Don't go anywhere.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Okay. Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Cory Johnson is with us now. Cory, welcome to the show. Thanks. Cory just got off the air and He literally got in his hot rod, spin some wheels, and got here in no time at all.
The magic of live TV.
It's incredible. But thanks for being with us. Tell the folks a little bit about Fox Sports 1280, of course, WGNO-TV, everything you're involved in.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Eric. I work this Gretna trash route on truck number 13. I pick up garbage in that section 13 part
That
of
wasn't
town.
you shaking that can on Tulane and Jeff Davis?
No, not really. We'll work for food, but I'm not really going to work for food. I want a free handout.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing a talk radio show, a talk TV show also on AM 1280 and on Cox Channel 4 TV and Charter Channel 333, and then doing some TV editorials a couple of times a week on Channel 26, News with a Twist. They stole one of the Channel 4 girls over
Oh,
there.
man. Want to rub it in a little bit? We miss her quite a bit.
No doubt. Cory, we were talking a little bit about LSU and the accomplishments this year. What's your thoughts about this year's LSU baseball team? We'll get into the nuts and bolts of what happened in the World Series, but your overall thoughts on how they did.
I would give them like an A+. I was talking about this the other day. Just, I guess Florida gets the 100A. What were the A+ grades? Like 97,
97 to 100, yeah.
Yeah. And then the middle of that 90 range was an A, and then the lower 90s were like A-. I would give them an A+. I can't just give them an A. I mean, I think making it to Omaha was probably like where they should have been, where everybody's like, okay, that's realistic. The way they beat Oregon State twice, I thought that was going over the top a little, where they exceeded almost like what maybe you thought they could do, and then making that championship game. So I'd give them like an A+. I thought it was a really, really good season, probably going a little bit farther than maybe they should have gone. You figure Oregon State was probably a little better team. TCU's always good. They couldn't get by Florida. So, no, I thought it was a really good baseball season. And what was great was the last 6 weeks. They were not terrible, but they went 24 of 27 to end the year essentially. So 6-7 weeks ago, you were like, can they even win the SEC West, much less the SEC? They'll probably host a regional. Will they host a super regional? Or will they have to go somewhere else? So they made, with no NBA playoffs around here, they made May and June fun.
Yeah, it is. It's always fun when a Louisiana team gets to the College World Series.
Yep.
It's almost like a rite of passage here in Louisiana. Guys, from me watching, the obviously the Super Regional, getting into the College World Series, especially when you look at Florida and Oregon State, more than I think those teams beating the Tigers, and I'm not taking anything away from either one of those teams, I felt like the Tigers really kind of beat themselves in a lot of cases. Uncharacteristic. The base running errors we saw, the fielding errors we saw, they didn't get any really consistency at the top of the lineup in terms of hitting, which you saw all season long. And of course, again, going back just to the game with the second game with Florida, uncharacteristic at the plate. I think there were 7 flyouts in the first 6 innings into that 20-mile-an-hour wind. And that's not normally something the Tigers do at the plate. They're usually very, very disciplined. So, again, I'm not taking anything away from Florida or Oregon State, but the Tigers play the way they can play, and maybe Eric Walker's still there as that third pitcher. It may have been a different situation, going forward. But I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
They seemed tight to me. They seemed tight when they arrived in Omaha, and I think you saw what happened, them losing to Oregon State, getting just absolutely blown out. And then I thought they were tight as the series began against Florida. I mean, when they fell behind early, this is a team, LSU, they're a front runner. They were 34-3 this season when they scored first, and when Florida took that early lead, it really put a lot of pressure on them, and they started to press. And then you saw in the second game, they're down 1-0, and you see the errors start to come out. The 3 errors early on. The Poche pitches well, but he has 2 unearned runs, and that's really hard to get around this time of year, especially when you're dealing with a pitching staff like Florida.
Yeah.
What about you, Cory? Do you think that, again, they beat themselves, or am I taking too much away from Florida and Oregon State?
I think a little bit of a combination of the two. I mean, that slide in the second that was, way off the bag, that cost a run that would have tied it up. That helps LSU mentally, and it hurts Florida. They get a little confidence hit. Instead, the run's pulled off the board, and the game's not tied, and then it got out of hand. And then I think, it's easy to play Monday quarterback. That's what we're doing right now.
Right, sure, absolutely.
But I'm sure Maneri keeping your boy in a little long.
Reynolds or Hess?
Yeah. Reynolds.
Yes.
Where he loads the bases in that extra inning. I mean, I think the longest he'd gone was like 3 1/3. This was putting it a little over the top. And the first guy walks. I mean, again, money quarterback. Yank him then. Second guy walks. My God, yank him then. The third guy, you load the bases. And then Bush came in and pitched well, but you're throwing him in that pickle, one out with the bases loaded. So, and then that crazy bounce off, the warning track over the wall to score 2 runs with that, double. So, I don't know, Eric. I think a little bit of both. When you get to the Elite Eight, when you get to that, like TCU, they might be the number 2 team in the country. They lost to Florida. Is it LSU or is it TCU? So the talent's really, really good in Omaha.
I think LSU is the second best team in the country. I think they might have been the best team in the country. But you look at Florida. Florida went 49 straight innings to close the season without making an error. When you get to this time of year, it's pitching and defense. And you look at what Florida did. Their pitching and defense absolutely controlled that series. And that's why they're national champs.
Which is what a lot of people thought LSU was going to be a favorite there because of, again, pitching and defense all year long. You add the fact that, again, they've been hitting the ball pretty well. They got guys that can hit the ball at the park up until this year. Not a lot of home runs at TD America trade, but again, that went out the window with a lot of guys again going yard, except for obviously the final game of the championship series. But again, you look at this situation with LSU. Again, they're the second best team in the nation. Florida handled them in the regular season. They handled them in the College World Series championship. So you got to tip your hat to Florida. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Guys, again, let's play Monday Morning Quarterback here because it's been a big topic of conversation. Johnny Holstaff, game 1. Poche, game 2. Lang, if necessary, game 3. A lot of people felt like it should have been Poche on short rest, Lang on short rest, and then if you get to game 3, you go Johnny Holstaff. Even though, again, Johnny Holstaff performed pretty well in game 1.
I mean, I told you, as soon as I walked through the door, I mean, you can't give away games. And it just seemed LSU was overconfident in the fact that they could come back with Poche and Lang in game 3, and you were assuming that if Johnny Holstaff didn't work out, well, then you've got those 2 guys there. And I think to assume that you're going to win those 2 games and you're going to be able to come back and nothing's going to happen along the way that's going to throw that plan off is not a good way to go. I think you go with Poche early, and then if you lose that game, well, then you come back with Lang. If you win, then you get to push Lang to the 3rd game anyway.
Right.
Well, look at the game plan for game 1. Had a good beginning. I mean, not that you agree with Gilbert or not, but okay, he's our starter, 5th-year guy from Baton Rouge. Maybe he's going to step up. That's good for your first third of the game. And then, Hess is going to come in, or Newman for the back third. Maneri basically said the middle, I don't know, man, it's kind of a crapshoot. Really, didn't even know. So a little bit of that is sort of an uncertainty that we're confident we can do well and we hope things fall into place and we win the game, but you're not going into the game with Poche or Lang where you're like, man, we're really confident we're going to win the game. And I read Glenn Gilbo's article on the Channel 4 website, which I thought was really good. He was almost sort of conceding through Maneri, yeah, we're almost going to lose game 1 and then we'll come back and win games 2 and 3 with our aces, They could have put Fayado or whatever his name is.
Fayado.
Yeah, to come pitch maybe on short on Wednesday, and he's as good as Lang or Poche.
I think that was their plan, too.
But baseball's such a tricky game. I mean, a lot of it is that you don't throw your ace on Friday, your second guy on Saturday, and your third guy on Sunday. Sometimes you go 2-1-3, or you flip the order around, and LSU did that. And I guess they wanted to rest Lang and Poche, get that extra day, and not do. I thought it was definitely going to be Poche, Lang, Eric as well, but and then they.
Well, he did it because again he was worried about their future in the major leagues and didn't want to go on short rest. But when you're playing for a championship, and these are, as you mentioned off the air, these are young guys.
I don't think. I mean, Poche has pitched for the last 4 years. He's pitched, I think, over 130 innings this year. I think he can handle going on 3 days rest instead of one less day of rest instead of 4. I mean, they do it. It happens in the big leagues in pressure situations.
Lang wasn't going to pitch on Wednesday if it made it to 3.
Exactly.
Who was going to pitch on Wednesday? Lang was going to pitch on 3 days rest. He pitched Saturday.
And Poche hasn't pitched that much over the last few weeks, so I don't think it was pushing them too hard at all. I just like you're saying, they almost conceded defeat in game 1 and felt like they could bounce back, and I just don't think you can wrestle away momentum like that, especially from a team as good as Florida.
Right, and look, give a lot of credit to Johnny Holstaff. I mean, Reynolds came in as a 5th-year senior. He pitched well.
Yep.
You mentioned Bush. I mean, you talked about Newman. As I mentioned on my radio show I think I had Fletcher Mackel on the program on the Monday
There
before.
goes the neighborhood. Jesus.
And I mentioned that it's a silver lining, in a lot of cases, that thrashing that they got from Oregon State, because they were able to get a bunch of arms in. They were able to get some guys in that normally wouldn't be able to play, and they maybe got the jitters out, and it ended up working in their favor a little bit in game one. Again, maybe the only mistake was Maneri, as he mentioned, getting a little greedy with Reynolds and leaving him in too long.
Yeah, he even said as much, exactly like you said, Eric. I was greedy.
And nobody knows Eric Walker's going to go out. I mean, you figure right
Peterson,
there, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there you go.
And you know what stinks is like I don't want to say every other pitch, but towards the end, like about every third pitch were great pitches. You're like, maybe the kid can stay in. So it's Monday quarterback, and I mean, you wanted to yank him after he walked the first guy, and you probably would have been okay, but I probably would have done exactly what Maneri was doing.
He gets that first out. He gets that first out in the fourth.
Exactly, quickly.
And like you got a good start from the guy. Then he throws, I think, 4 consecutive balls. You got to come out.
You know, it was like about 12 balls in 15 pitches.
Right.
It was out of control.
Yeah,
but it was a 4-pitch walk.
Right. Yeah, it was.
It started.
And that last one was like 3 feet outside. It wasn't. I mean, your boy had to go way out to grab it.
As much as we second guess Maneri, we got to give him a lot of credit for this team. Got to give him a lot of credit for the season. He took a lot of flack for those midweek games, losing to state schools.
Yep.
And of course, again, I still remember him talking about it in one of his press conferences, going back to what Bertman told him. Don't be afraid to experiment in midweek games. Find out what you have. You're playing for the SEC championship. You're playing for the postseason. And a lot of the natives are restless at LSU, wondering, what are you doing? You're losing to UNO. You're losing to Tulane. Well, what's going on here? And of course, we found out why. And of course, it helped them, obviously, when they caught fire down the line, especially at the end of SEC play into postseason.
Yeah, Paul Maneri pushed all the right buttons with this team this year. You can't deny that for all the midweek losses. And look, you want to be playing your best at the end of the season. That's every coach's goal, no matter what the sport is. And he did that with his team this year.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's tough being an AD today with the short time spans on stuff. I'm not saying they were even thinking about it for very long, but I bet they were getting some affluent boosters and alums like 8 weeks ago. Maneri's got to go. I'm sick of this, you know? Because LSU, what were they at one point? I think they were like, I forget what they were, like 9-6 in the SEC or something like that. They weren't doing all that well. They were like, that SEC at one point was like 8 teams could have won it. So they were really upset with Maneri, all these seniors coming back and the pitching staff. But I don't think it ever caught any momentum, but it's got to stink in today's quick pull world where you want, microwave quick results.
Yes.
I'm sure they heard a little bit where someone's having Ruth Chris on College Drive in Baton Rouge going, Charlie, 8 weeks ago you wanted me to fire Maneri,
Exactly, no doubt. And before we end this talk about LSU having a great season, a tip of the cap to those 4 seniors for coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't normally walk away from Major League money. Every one of those guys turned that into a better pick and more money for them, and they got a chance to at least go to Omaha and at least vie for a national championship.
Absolutely. Without those guys on this team, this team is not
Agreed.
in Omaha. This team doesn't have the kind of resiliency that they showed all season long. And really, it was beneficial for those players because they all upped their stock in the Major League draft, got drafted higher than they would have the year before.
Yep.
And I think that really lays the foundation for a lot of guys to look at that in the future and say, hey, maybe I should come back and not test it. Because really, if you're not drafted in the top 4 or 5 rounds of Major League Baseball, the numbers show that you're generally not going to make I think leagues.
Too bad we had to see that spaghetti hair on Kramer. Right? It looked more like his mom, Kim
Yeah,
Ball.
he sure did, didn't he?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, we'll take a quick break. We come back, want to shift gears. We'll talk about the Pelicans, talk about the Saints. We'll open the phone lines as well. Cory Johnson is with us from Fox Sports 1280, Lyons, Yellin from WLAE-TV. I am your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or AmcoFenceCompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Lyons Yellin of WLAE-TV, Cory Johnson of Fox Sports 1280. Guys, we'll switch to the Pelicans. NBA free agency opens up 11:01 Friday night here in New Orleans. First chance that teams will have an opportunity to be able to speak to players, their own, obviously, and players that are unrestricted free agents or restricted free agents. They can have the conversation with them, put the parameters of a contract together. If they're going to do a sign and trade, work with other teams to try to work a deal out. And then July the 6th is the official day that they can sign. The word is now the Pelicans will meet with Jrue Holiday on Friday night, 11:01. They're going to make an offer somewhere between $25 and $30 million. And then they're going to use the mid-level exception, which is around $8.3 million on his brother Justin Holiday. So the Holiday boys will have an opportunity to play in New Orleans together. Guys, I'm going to say Dell Demps is out of his mind. Okay, all right, literally. I mean,
you just figured that out.
To be able to again, with the problems that we have with the salary cap right now, when you have a supermax player like Anthony Davis, when you got another max player like DeMarcus Cousins that you're going to try to keep here long term, and you look at again the overpaying of contracts for guys like Solomon Hill, E'Twaun Moore, Amaris Sheik. We go right down the line on one after the other on this roster. And there's no doubt Jrue Holiday is a nice player. He's going to be an off guard on this team and a guy that, again, has done all the right things for this organization. But I don't think he is a max player. And, when you look at some of the other options out there right now, Kyle Lowry, Patty Mills, George Hill, Jeff Teague, those are guys that are point guards. J.J. Redick, Tony Snell, Kyle Korver, guys that are shooting guards. That can shoot for you out there. On the trading block right now, Rajon Rondo, Ricky Rubio. I don't know how you in good conscience, even though, again, the salary cap implications hurt the Pelicans if they don't re-sign him, how you can offer him a contract from what is being reported, somewhere between a 5-year deal, somewhere between $25 and $30 million a year.
You almost have to, but you can't. You can't give him that kind of money. You're negotiating against yourself, really.
Like you did with a Sheik.
Absolutely. Nobody in the league is going to give him that kind of money. I think, obviously, if a sign and trade would be nice for the Pelicans. They've got without Holiday, they've got about $15 million of cap space right now, 9 players on the roster, but you can't give him max money.
Right. From what I understand, they will have $14 million to spend if they don't sign him, $8 million to spend if they do sign him, and of course those mid-level exceptions go in. Cory, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's be realistic. Korver or Redick would be a great acquisition, but that's not going to happen. I think Cousins was the big free agency splash. The trade last year was. So they feel they got Anthony Davis, they got Cousins. There's a small market in New Orleans. We're fortunate to have 2 guys, much less one, that are big-time NBA superstar type players. I just don't see them going out and making a splash. And I'm not saying you work a trade like Houston did and you get Chris Paul, but I don't see them making a significant upgrade with a player that is even halfway to Anthony Davis or Cousins. I think they're going to bring in a bunch of serviceable guys, hopefully not overpay for them. And they're going to see if those 2 big superstars in small market New Orleans and maybe a new coaching philosophy with these 2 guys on the same team and having a whole training camp to teach them, if that's enough to get them over the top. I got to agree with Lyons. I would kind of pull the gimmick with, what sinks, Eric, other teams that are going to be more aggressive in NBA free agency, they'll go get Jrue Holiday, and the fan base in those cities will be like, great, we upgraded our point guard spot, or wherever they want to play him, the 2 guard, wherever they're going to play him. But I don't see the Pelicans doing that. I think the big free agency splash was the trade last year where they got Cousins.
Well, they have no other options in free agency, really. It's Jrue Holiday. I mean, you can go out and get a guy like Darren Collison, who's people here are familiar with.
Yes.
Yeah, I would do that.
I mean, I would
Drew
think
Holiday.
I mean, you're talking about a
Do
guy
something
that's
like that.
averaged, between 12 and 16 points per game, a good service player, a guy like Sean Livingston.
How much of a drop-off is that from Drew Holiday?
I don't think it's much. I think you set
Exactly.
yourself up better for the future
Yep.
if you sign a player like that and move on from Drew Holiday. I think giving him a max contract is simply a PR move by this team, and I don't think it's worked. The real problem is the fact that this team has been in win now mode since year 2 of Anthony Davis when he was still developing, and they have mortgaged the entire future of this organization, and now it's going to cost them, and they're going to foreclose on this team if you want to keep to that reference.
And the point guard's like a quarterback. So, in the draft, they'll be like, these teams that are picking first, second, third, they'll go pick these quarterbacks that might be 15th, 20th in the NFL draft because they need a QB, and it's the most important position. There are other teams that need a point guard, and they'll pay Drew Holiday a big salary and be happy they got him, but I don't think the Pelicans can afford that at all, and you're paying him like he's a top 5 point guard, and he's not.
Right.
He's a kind of a middle point guard. I would get like Collison, who you had before from UCLA, who was you jettisoned to Indiana, I think, a few years ago.
He's in Sacramento
now. Yeah. Get him on the tail end. He's like a tail end of that Drew Holiday category. I mean, Holiday's better, but he's the front end of the middle. Collison would be like the tail end of the middle. It's not even the back end of the starting point guard. So I would get like a middle of the road starting point guard, exactly like Collison, and let Holiday go just because of the money. It's too much money.
I'd rather overpay for a guy like Sean Livingston, who's got championship experience. We know he can play offense and defense, has been a part of that Golden State Warriors team for a few years now.
Yep.
I mean, he understands what it is to move the ball, to be unselfish, and to be a part of a winning culture, which is something that this locker room desperately needs.
Yep.
Guys, in the NBA, there's no forgiveness for making mistakes with the salary cap. And this team has consistently overpaid for players. I mean, you look at the Amir Sheik deal, $21 million over the next 2 years that they've got. There's a player option in the third year for another almost $12 million. You got $11 million that is pledged to Alexa Jensen over the next 2 years. They overpaid for Solomon Hill, $38 million of Solomon Hill over the next 3 years. Each one more, $25 million over the next 3 years. Again, when you make those type of investments in players that are marginal, maybe a little bit above average, when you're paying them that type of salary in anticipation that the salary cap will grow every year. Well, it didn't grow as much as they thought it was.
And they think those players are going to emerge and be good.
Well,
they can't go after the premier guys that are going to be good, so they have to go after the second tier. But you still have to pay them because you're competing against the rest of the NBA, and then some of these guys don't pan out.
You look at the salary cap, $99 million instead of the $102 million they thought it was going to be, up from $92 million. But again, the Pelicans just haven't had a lot of wiggle room. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, when you've got two players that one's a super max and one's going to be a max guy, I don't think you have the luxury of overpaying for a player. And this is a package deal. This is Justin Holiday and Drew Holiday as a package deal coming to New Orleans. You better, if you're Del Demps, you better hope it works, or you better hope you can unload some of this dead weight that you've got on this roster right now.
Oh, and they have to. I mean, they're almost in an untenable situation because they have to win. Cousins is the free agent after this season. Anthony Davis can opt out in 2 seasons. So if they don't, they're gone. I mean, like let's face it. They've made so many mistakes with this organization. Anthony Davis is not staying here when he can opt out of his contract.
No, to be Chris Paul all over again.
Right.
Yes.
5 years in and I'm gone. And Cousins really dictate that. If they have a bad year next year and Cousins doesn't re-sign, then Anthony Davis is gone after the next year for sure.
Although I do believe Cousins will resign because, again, of the money he lost in the Sacramento deal. Once Sacramento traded him, he would have been a Supermax player. He can make the most here in New Orleans by signing a 5-year deal. I don't think that he's going to walk away from that kind of money, when you start looking at what was on the table for him there. But again, I think you guys mentioned it's a 3-year window now. And if you got 3 years with Anthony Davis to get this right, if you don't, he's opting out and he's moving on.
If you look at it that way, if you say Cousins will take that 5-year deal and re-sign, well then you've got to be smart this year and not give Drew Holiday the max money. Go out and sign a serviceable point guard, and then you can be set up for free agency next year, where you really will have some money to spend.
Right, and some guys that maybe are easier to come off the books. Like a Alexis Agenza, like an Omer Sheik, again, where it's a little bit more palatable, where you don't have to take a future first-round pick and try to be able to put it with that player to move him, to get him off your roster, or be in a situation where you're going to pay him over time with the stretch provision in the NBA right now.
The Pels are like the Saints with the NFC South. This Southwest division just gets tough.
Oh.
You're talking about, hey, how the Saints going to do? It's like, great, we can talk about the improvement in linebackers and stuff like that. Tampa, Atlanta, and Carolina seem like they got a lot better in the offseason. And now you look at the Southwest division, San Antonio's always going to be there no matter what. And Houston just got Chris Paul.
Right. But I do wonder how that's going to work.
I mean,
right. Well, yeah, no, all those. The West has gotten stronger.
Minnesota's young and good. That'd be a fun team to be a fan
absolutely.
of.
And as far as the Chris Paul thing, I just wonder again how that is a fit in Houston long term. I just do. Harden is both those guys are ball dominant guys.
Yeah, they are playmakers.
And I wonder how that's going to work. That's all.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see those guys on the court together.
Right.
I don't like the fit particularly, but
right. Well, again, if they implode, it's good for the Pelicans.
No, it is. That is going to be a tough fit though, because they both want it.
Yeah, no doubt. Pelicans traded their second-round pick, which is the 40th in the draft, in cash to the Hornets for the draft rights to Frank Jackson. Jackson is said to be a combo guard, can play the point or the off guard. Everything that I've been able to read, going back, looking at some of the game tape on him, he's going to be probably more suited to be the off guard in New Orleans. He will be a guy that maybe they can count on and shoot the basketball, especially when you're going to get better spacing with the guys like Davis and Cousins. There's open shots for guys that can get on the perimeter and hit open shots. The question is, again, he was able to get his shot off in college going to the rim. Will he be able to do that against grown men in the NBA at 19 years old?
Yeah.
I think he's a nice prospect for the next couple of years, but I don't know how much you count on him in year one.
I don't think you count on him all year one. I mean, Duke didn't count on him off the bench. He didn't start for Duke. So he's a 19-year-old kid who's kind of skinny. It's like maybe 215 or something like that. So I think he's sort of like, I don't know if he's on the developmental team, but I think he's on the roster. But he's
like Chick Diallo going back and forth to the D-League team.
He's 6-8 minutes a game, and for a couple of years. I don't think
he'll play a little bit more. He started, I think, the last 16 games for Duke, and,
he did.
and played well. He averaged about 15 points per in the last 9 for Duke. So he showed some improvement throughout the season, but still he's a child. He's 1 year out of college, and it really just goes to highlight the flaw in the NBA and the college basketball. They've got to let these guys stay in school a little bit longer.
Yeah, that new plan might work good, where you kind of emulate baseball a little bit. You either go out after they'll let them go after high school, and you just don't go into the NBA
or 3 years
or into college. But if you go to college, you got to play. What they're saying 2.
They're saying 2. I think it should be.
I think it should be
3. I think it should be 3. These guys are just not. They're not developed enough. Dealing with the off-the-court stresses. I mean, physically, they cannot withstand an 82-game season and compete with these guys that are grown men.
But 3 years might get the guy on the fence to go to the NBA, and he's not.
Well, you got to deal with Europe too, and you got to say, look, if you go to Europe, you're there for 3 years. It's got to mirror. Right. They have to mirror each other.
And look, let me tell you something. It has hurt college basketball. It's hurt the NBA. You look at the first round of this year's draft. You look at the first round for the last few drafts. They're basically betting on these players developing, guys that have 1 year of college. It hurts them in terms of they don't get the playing time. They're languishing on a bench. You forget who they are because, again, they weren't household names to begin with because you only saw them for 1 year in college.
But Butler, Xavier,
there's no doubt.
They love it. No, they love it because they're full of fourth and fifth year seniors that aren't playing in the NBA. And if the other teams had fourth and fifth year seniors, they'd be the B guys. But because they're the only fourth and fifth year seniors, they're the A guys, and they can compete because they know what the other guy's going to do. It's a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds on these other teams with a lot more talent.
Right. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Gordon Hayward.
Right.
You're talking about guys that stayed in college. Look at the success that they've had.
Yes.
If you stay in college, you develop your game, you will have a chance to make up that money. Going a few years early and languishing on the bench is not going to get you a big contract any faster.
But all these kids think, I'm going to be great.
Well, because it's been put in their heads since they were little kids. playing in the biddy leagues on these AAU circuits. And they all believe that, again, they're the next big thing and they're going to be able to get in the NBA and make a splash. Most of them, for every one Anthony Davis, you got 25 to 30, maybe 40 guys that are going to basically end up in a D League or they're going to be playing overseas.
No, and I don't know how much of a development the D League is compared to college.
And it's the G League now.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's the Gatorade League.
Right.
Sponsored by Gatorade.
Yep.
Right. And the Pelicans will have their own farm team at some point in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what the Pelican fans can look forward to if Drew Holiday signs with the Pelicans tonight. On Friday night. $8 million mid-level exception. It's about $8.3 million. That's 2 to 4 years. That's supposed to be going to Justin Holiday if the combo deal happens. They have a biannual exception of $3 million, and they have a trade exception of $3.6 million. So not a lot of wiggle room for this team to be able to sign players to be able to fill out this roster. So again, they've got a lot on their plate to be able to make up for some really bad deals that they've done over the last few years. I've mentioned again. The NBA salary cap is one that does not forgive at all. Okay, there is no forgiveness. You sign a player, you got to be able to pay that player until the end of the contract. Guys, let's shift gears to the New Orleans Saints. The big story is Nick Fairley is out for the season. He's to be put on the reserve non-football illness list. There right now, he signed a 4-year, $28 million contract, $14 million guaranteed, but really, he gets the $8 million signing bonus and his $1 million salary, which is guaranteed in 2017. He got that at signing. Going back and researching the reserve non-football illness list, a team can take back some of the money from the player. They can be punitive and hold back a part of the bonus, but then it will be taken by the NFLPA to a special master. There's been a couple instances, and I'll use one as an example. Plexico Burress, when he had the self-inflicted gunshot wound in the New York City nightclub, the Giants tried to pull money back from him on his contract. The special master ruled in favor of the player. So again, when you look at a situation with Nick Fairley with the heart ailment, signing the contract, playing well for them last year, it would probably be a PR nightmare on the part of the Saints to try to pull back some of this money on this contract. They're in a little bit of a quandary here.
If you can't get the money back from Plexico Burress, I don't know who you can get it back from. But they are, in the timeline, as we've discussed, it still doesn't make sense. He's due $1 million this year. The Saints don't have to pay him that. But that's pennies for them. The $8 million, you would think as soon as you sign that contract that before you hand them the check for $8 million, that you said you got to take a physical. Now, the only logical explanation for that is that the Saints team of doctors missed whatever his enlarged heart, that it had gotten worse, and then something happened with Fairley after that. That's the only logical explanation based on everything that we've heard from the organization.
Yeah, it is. It's a devastating blow, Eric. I mean, selfishly, obviously not selfishly, you're looking out for Fairley. As a human being, you want him to be healthy.
Absolutely.
Not play again to live, don't play again. But selfishly, as a Saint fan, you're like, my God, you look at the top 6-8 players on this team. Fairley's in the top 6-8. Unger's in the top 5 or 6. Teron Armstead's number 2, probably to Breeze, most important Saint. You're going to have Armstead out maybe the whole year.
Well,
Who knows?
He's out for the year.
Yeah,
he's
not coming back.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Fairley's out for the year. So those are your best linemen on the O-line and D-line. You lose both of them. Unger's probably your next best. He's out at least till week 1, till early September. Those are just blows that a team that really needs those guys to be healthy because you're bringing in new guys and you want to up it a level, that sets you back a little bit.
Yeah.
And when Breeze, who normally is Mr. Politically Correct, and I was at Nagasaki when that bomb dropped out of the Enola Gay. It wasn't that bad. He was even going, my God, this is brutal. This is a devastating loss. Even Breeze saying it. So when Breeze said that hurt. It was like, man, even Breeze is admitting.
Yeah, but Corey, it's true. And you throw in Donnell Ellaby on that. I mentioned it on this show last week. Mentioned on the radio show. You're looking at arguably 4 of the top 10 players on the Saints team that may not be available week 1. 2 of those won't be available at all this season. You're hoping Unger comes back. There's continuity. He's not going to have any problems going forward. You have to question that again, right? Why is Unger having surgery not right after the season?
Yeah,
Why are they allowing this to heal?
Yep.
That's another question mark about the medical team there. But that is significant for a team, as you mentioned, that is trying to get better, and these are guys that are the upper echelon of the franchise.
No. And if you think of upper echelon players, the great teams, one that go into the playoffs every year and win, they probably have those upper echelon players that number in the teens. The Saints have like maybe 6 or 8, and these are in that group. So it's really doubly devastating. It's not like you got like 16 or 18 of these guys and you're losing 3 or 4. You only got about 6 or 8 and you're losing 3 or 4.
And not only that, you had so many questions all over this roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball, the back end, the linebackers, the secondary, and you had questions on the offensive side of the ball about the running backs, how that's going to work, and the receivers now that Mike Thompson's number one. The two places where things seem to be pretty stable is that you had a really good offensive line and a really good defensive line that was ready to kind of have a breakout year and see what guys can do. And now you just absolutely sliced those up, and you got to fill some huge holes.
No, left tackle's the most important position on the O-line, one of the most important in football, top 3 or 4. And then Fairley, the Saints have struggled under Peyton stopping the run up the gut, and you finally get a D tackle that can, take on double teams and free up the ends and the linebackers. And they'll be better, I even think, without Fairley on defense, Eric, because of all the linebacker acquisitions and new players. I mean, how can they be any worse? But that's a blow. That stinks.
Think about this. If the Saints didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have any luck at all. But they drafted a left tackle in the trade for
that worked out.
I mean, that is hands down the luckiest thing that's happened to this team since they won the Super Bowl.
Well, let's talk about that because, again, you're losing a guy like Fairley. You're losing a guy like Armstead. But, again, now the rubber hits the road on your draft class. You've got Ryan Ramczyk. He's coming off a little bit of a surgery on the hip. He's going to be your heir apparent left tackle.
You probably got to throw him in at left
he's
tackle
go
right away.
I mean, you've got to do that, right?
What the hell?
Okay, and then you got Sheldon Rankins, you got David Onyemata, and you got Tyler Davidson that's going to man the interior of that defensive line. As I mentioned on this program, the radio show, they didn't know what they had in Nick Fairley. Sheldon Rankins was drafted to be Nick Fairley. David Onyemata, again, they thought that he was a couple-year project. He got a lot of playing time last year, and again, you got to figure that both those guys should be ready to play well for this team going forward. So now you go into your draft class and you see how well you drafted. You don't want to throw a rookie out there at left tackle, but you may have no choice at this point. But again, you've got some guys on the interior of that defensive line now that have at least had an opportunity to get a year under their belt. Tyler Davidson with a couple years on his belt. So we'll see how good that draft class is now.
I don't think people realize how tough Tyler Davidson is. He played through the entire last season hurt. He had a foot injury. He had a shoulder injury. He had surgery this offseason. He should be fine for training camp. But just when you think about all the games missed, and you got this guy who's still out there playing week in and week out, he's missed one game over his first 2 years of his career. So he's got a lot of experience and some toughness to go along with that.
You're going to need another guy that's going to have to be in that rotation, whether that's someone from another team or he's on this roster right now, we don't know. And of course, again, you're going to have some backups, another backup on that offensive line now, because Sergio Clemente is kind of your guy that, is kind of your jack of all trades. If somebody goes down, you're in a tough situation. Right now, Josh Laribas has been playing the center position for this team. And ultimately, again, you need Unger back because you don't have a lot behind him as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it happens. But, man, you're right. 4 of the top 10 players on this team out. Ellerby, I think they've addressed that with the number of linebackers they brought in.
Yeah, they brought in a bunch. Yeah, you'd have to bring in like 3 left tackles right now to balance it out on the O-line side.
No doubt. Let's head to the phone lines, guys. 866-3200, Cory Johnson and Lyons Yellin are my guest. Let's go to the lower 9 and Cole. Cole, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Cole.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
I just wanted to, I think personally this season's already a bust with our O-line situation, and it's really disappointing because I was hoping Peterson was just going to go off this year. So if it is a bust, do y'all see Sean Payton coming back next year? And or do you just see the whole team getting blown up? I mean, I don't know what you do after 4 losing seasons, especially with Mickey Loomis. I mean, he might make Bill Dempsey our head coach. I don't know. Anyways, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Cole. Guys, I think Sean Payton's here as long as he wants to be here, to be honest with you. But I do think this is a tipping point. You get another year, 7-9. The first question you got to ask is Drew Brees coming back.
Yeah.
That's the biggest question to me.
Suggesting Mickey Loomis coaching, like a Jeff Bauer with the then Hornets?
He's got a tough time, again, taking care of the Hornets right now.
How do you keep Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton when it's You got 3 7-9s in a row and no playoffs. Could you imagine another 7-9 or 6-10?
Well, I think Mickey Loomis is untouchable. Okay,
as long as the Bensons own this franchise, Mickey Loomis will be here in the same capacity.
And ultimately, again, I agree with you. Even if Mr. Benson passes, I think that Lauscha, Loomis, Bensel, that triumvirate is here. The question is, what happens with Sean Payton down the line? And look, they've been building this team for the last 3 years through the draft. They're expecting to be better. You mentioned a little bit earlier, Corey, the rest of the NFC South's gotten better too.
Yep.
So, guys, do you think? What do you think about Sean Payton? Get back to the college question.
I don't know how you keep him again, but Payton and Coughlin were almost identical. Like Coughlin and Payton, Coughlin's last 3-4 seasons, Payton and him were almost identical. Coughlin's got 2 Super Bowls, not 1. Down the stretch, they were like the same. Coughlin gets fired, Payton gets an extension and a $1 million a year raise. So it's New York, New Orleans, major market, small market, whatever, the Tisch family, whoever's up there. And Benson, it's just a different mentality. So I would think normally in the real world, yes, another losing season, he is 110% gone. In small market New Orleans, Benson up in age, the precarious situation, they might just be like, all right, we get rid of him. Who are we replacing him with that's a clear improvement, and he might stick around another year?
And I would just tell Cole, don't go buy Super Bowl tickets just yet, or even register for playoff tickets. But I don't think the season's a bust just yet. There's some nice young talent on this team, and they've done a good job overhauling this roster in a way that there's actually some unity in the locker room now, and you really feel it. I know we've talked about it for a few years, but this is a team. The players respect each other. They get along, and I think that could go a long way to improving the product.
And I don't think Payton is the same coach he was when they won the Super Bowl. He might be a little different. That was 2009. That was 8 years ago.
But he was much easier to deal with back then.
Yeah, I guess so. But today, do you think Payton's like a loser and not a winner? Do you think Payton's softer and not the fierce competitor? I mean, I think he's a winner, and I think he's a fierce competitor. So he wants to win. He's not being lazy or not focused. So it should be an interesting year. Lots of young talent and a coach that has a reputation. Let's see what he does. There's a lot on the line.
And as always with all NFL teams, it's about injuries. Number one, number 9's got to be upright. He's got to be able to play all 16 games and into the playoffs if you do. But then, the problem with the Saints over the last few years, they've been hit at one certain position with a tremendous amount of injuries. This year they've tried to build depth at certain positions. You can't have a situation where we've already seen, like on the offensive line, where you have multiple players that are starters are going down, because then obviously that's going to hurt you. You hope that if you have the injuries, they'll be liberal across the roster, and of course that way you can overcome it. That's been one of the biggest problems with this team as well: quality depth. Once you had to get into the situation where you're bringing cornerbacks off the street, it was hard to be able to compete with anyone.
Yeah, I'm not as look. It's a blow. You lose Armstead, you lose Fairley. That hurts. It stings, but they can work around that. They've got time to deal with that, and I think they can be okay. Armstead played 9 games last year, so the Saints know how to scheme around that. As long as you've got number 9 on that offense, and now you've got Peterson. I mean, you've got a chance.
And the D will be better, I think, even without Fairley.
Yeah.
So the team could be improved, but we just don't know what Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and Carolina are going to be like. But the scary thing about Breeze, 38 now, pretty injury-free as a Saint.
Yep.
It's like the percentages start catching up after a while. And, I don't want to sit here and go, jinx, and I don't believe in jinxes anyway, but it's almost like he's due. It's like your buddy that goes to the casino and he's like, I've lost 6 times in a row. You might win this time because you've lost 6 times in a row. Breeze has been upright for a long, long time. And when the O-line gets beat up and these defensive coordinators, they know. They want, let's knock 9 out the game, and we got a much better chance of winning. So, Breeze upright is key.
Let's go to Greg and Homer. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg. Greg, you with us? All right, let's move on to the next call. Let's go to River Ridge and AJ. AJ, welcome to the show.
Oh, man. What the fuck happened?
Okay, all right. Where are we going next? I'm sorry.
Hello?
Okay, good enough. Guys, I do want to, with the time left, I did want to bring up the possibility of the city and the state and the Saints working together to refurbish the Dome and to sign a long-term deal. Such a different vibe than what we've seen in the past with this organization and the state, almost waiting to the last minute Again, never on the same page, very antagonistic between each other in terms of getting a deal done. This seems like this is really, if things go well, this could be, again, a really good thing for the city, the state, and obviously keeping the Saints here long term.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the opening salvo in a negotiation that will probably take a little while, and you really have to. I don't know if you can continue to just put a Band-Aid on the Superdome. I mean, I think it's at some point you're going to have to build a new building, and it's probably going to take an owner, somebody worth multiple billions of dollars coming in and buying both of these teams at some point. So I think to create some long-term security with the Saints in New Orleans makes this team probably help somebody come in and purchase it. I think there's a lot of elements going on right
Jeff
here.
Duncan had a great article about, I guess he went to the Manning Passing Academy, talked to the Mannings. I mean, between Archie Manning, Eli and Peyton, and even Cooper is like a financial guy that knows a lot. He puts big multi-million-dollar deals together, hotels, restaurants, all this kind of stuff. I would imagine the Mannings are going to be minority owners as a group one day, and then who knows where they could go from there. But yeah, Eric, Doug Thornton was talking about the Dome, and it's an iconic building that I think it constantly needs to be upgraded, or you got to do like Lyons said and build a new stadium. But they're going to do another few $100 million. I think the deal was they got a firm out of San Francisco that's like a HOK, like the Kansas City firm, but a sports architectural firm. And I think they were like, give us a minimum of $150 million, up to about $500 million, up to $500 million, of what we can do to improve not only the Dome, but the McKithen Sports Complex a little. They're talking about maybe fixing the ramps in front on Poydras Street and stuff like that.
Maybe some green space.
But yeah, exactly. Some green space where the parking lots are and something to that effect. But you got to, constantly update these stadiums. It's kind of ironic. In the late 60s, that powerful congressional delegation we had in Louisiana, they wanted to have the AFL-NFL merger. We basically green-lighted this monopoly, and it got us the Saints. But by green-lighting the monopoly, the NFL forces cities build a new stadium or we'll move. Just look at Oakland, San Diego, and St. Louis. So it got us the Saints, and it could lose us the Saints. That NFL pressure of build a new stadium or we'll go somewhere else that will.
Look, guys, there's no doubt. I mean, when you look at, the Dome, and look, I think we're in a tough situation. We're pretty much landlocked now. Again, that McKithen Sports Complex is pretty much where any sports arena or dome would have to be. The fact that they're moving forward and they're trying to use modern techniques, modern technology to be able to enhance the dome, maybe even for the first time taking a hard look at the terrace, which has never been looked at, constantly upgrading it. Maybe you can get some more time out of it. But I've always said, by the time the Saints contract is up in 2025, this building will be 50 years old. And again, we've got to make sure that NFL owners and just the psyche of the folks that are around the NFL, they look at that building like they look at Lambeau Field. And again, it's got to be looked at as an iconic building going forward. And this may go a long way in getting that done.
Yeah, but it's not Lambeau Field, and the Saints don't have the championships or the pedigree to make it.
It is a historic building.
It's for us here, but I don't think around the rest of the league. You're going to have to build a new stadium. That's the reality. You're going to throw $500 million at a building that's going to be 50 years old when you can spend $1 billion and just build a new one. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. There are options around this city. I think there's ways to expand it. And I won't get into all that. The riverfront, yeah, absolutely.
I kind of disagree a little bit, though. I think that's the ideal way, and I think if New Orleans had their you-know-what together, that would be the future. But I think what they're going to do is redo the Dome for this next thing, and then I think after that, they may. The Dome's problem is it's a square or round facility. It's multi-purpose. The NFL's all these rectangular shapes.
Well, you could put like 2 Superdomes into Jerry World?
Guys, I got to cut us off. We're up against the clock. Cory Johnson, Lyons, Yellin, thanks for being with us. Wish we could continue that conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLE at 10 p.m. Also on Friday night on Pelican Sports Television at 9 o'clock. That is statewide. You can catch me on the radio, 990 AM WGSO. That's weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. The TuneIn Radio app is a great way to take the show with you anywhere. Also, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. And, of course, you can catch all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to Lyons, Yellin, and Cory Johnson. Also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Kenny Juno, Naila Jones, Christy Smith, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
WLAE, Channel 32 in New Orleans.